Welcome back to the third video. Now, as I said, in this one we'll be making a proper working function. So let's say we have to add two numbers and we'll be making a function for doing that. Now there are again three things which are essential while making a function. The very first thing is the function return type, which is this, the very first thing that we write in the function body or the prototype. And next thing is the function name, so I'll just name it add, and in these brackets we have to add arguments, right? Now an argument is basically the value which the function might need, all the different values that the function might require. So let's say we are going to add two integers here, so we'll need to give the function the two integers to add, right, without which it cannot function. So we'll write int a and int b. Now make sure that you write it two times, right? You cannot write int a comma b, that is not allowed. You have to write the data type every single time. So we have to write int a and int b just like that. Again, this is the function's return type. So void basically means that this function is self-sufficient and it will not return anything back to the main body. On the other hand, if we write int here, so this basically means that at the end of the function's operations, it is going to return an integer value to the main function or whichever function has called this one. So we'll need to store this value wherever we call it, right? So let's first do void and then I'll tell you about int as well. And now here inside the body we'll simply add the two numbers. So we'll just say printf the sum is and a plus b. So this is what the function is going to do. It is going to add the two numbers which we give it, right? So let's now go ahead and make the prototype as well. Void add, and here we need to specify the number and types of arguments exactly, but the name is not necessary. So again we have two integer arguments here, so that is what we specified in the prototype as well. The prototype is also referred to as function declaration sometimes, and the body is also called as the function definition. And now we'll call the function. So let's say we have two integers and I'll initialize I to 10 and j to say 17, and we'll call the function add with the values of I and j, right? I and j. So now what this should do is it should call the function here. The control will be transferred to the function. It will see the two values are integers, so it will take these two values and assign it to a and b respectively, and then it will calculate the sum of a and b and display it to us. And after that the program should exit because there is nothing else following this body, right? So let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. Okay, so we get the sum is 27, which is correct because I is 10 and j is 17. Now suppose we have two more numbers. Let's say we have k and l as well, and we need to add k again and l again. So let's say k is say 20 and l is 90. So we need not write everything again. We can simply call add with the values of k and l. So that is how easy it is to use a function, right? It reduces our efforts to a minimal. We need not write the entire code again. We'll just call it once more. So let's try that out as well. We should get 110, right? So we get the sum is 27 and the sum is 110, and similarly you can go on calling this function any number of times you want, right? So this was a function without any return type or with the void return type, which is not returning any value. Now let's try making a function which returns an integer value. So in this case what we are going to do is we'll simply call the function to add and return the value to us. We'll not be displaying the value. So we'll make a temporary variable here sum, and we'll write sum is equal to a plus b, and we'll write return sum. Now this statement is very important because if we say int or if we specify any other return type apart from void, we need to return that particular value. So since sum is an integer, so we are returning an integer value here. If we say float add, so we need to return a float variable here. So if you go ahead and run this now, you will get an error because the sum is an integer and it expects a floating return value. But since we are dealing with integer at the moment, let's go ahead and make an integer one. Again we need to modify it here. The return type should be the same as the function definition, and we haven't changed the argument, so that looks just fine. Again, let's try adding two numbers. So let's read the numbers from the user this time. So we'll say enter two numbers and scanf percentage d I and j. Right, so we have stored two numbers from the user in the variables I and j, and now we need to calculate the sum. So we'll make another temporary variable here, because as I said, if we are returning a value we need to store it here. So we'll say temp is equal to add of I and j. Now what this statement will do is it will call the function add, give it the values of I and j, and since it is returning an integer, it will store this result in the temp variable, right? So that is what this statement is going to do. And to display the sum, we just need to display the value of temp. So we'll say the sum is percentage d and temp. Right, so that is one way of doing it. Let's see how it runs, and then I'll show you the another way as well. So we need to enter two numbers, let's say 1 and 2, and the sum is 3. So it works just fine. Another way of doing this statement here is we need not store it explicitly. We can directly call the function in the printf statement only. So if we say I comma j right here in the printf statement, it should call the function and should display the return variables value automatically. So let's run this and see if we get it or not. So two numbers 4 and 5, and we get the sum is 9, right? So this also works fine. If you want to display the result, then you can do this. If you want to use the particular value of sum again in the main body, then you need to store it in another variable like we did with the temp. So just to recap one last time, return type, name of the function, and arguments. Now arguments are also referred to as parameters, which are basically all the things that a function needs to work with, and this is the function's body. If you are giving a return type other than void, you need to return the variable of that particular type. If you are returning a variable, you need to store that variable in the main body, or you can display it directly in the printf statement. And in the case of the prototype, the return type, the name of the function, and the number and type of argument should be equal or should be similar to the function's definition. And you need not specify the names of the argument here. Even if you give a and b here, it's not a problem, but who will write those extra things, right? So that was all about the basics of functions. Go ahead, create your own function, and in the next video we'll be talking about functions in a bit more detail. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.